researchers from Crime Spotlight UK, and we have done our own research. We've compiled our own dossier, and here it is. The map of the United Kingdom with this grooming gangs scandal. You show that this is truly a national scandal. Indeed, the map's so large we can't even fit in Plymouth in the bottom, where we have found over 50 different towns and cities with some 500 convictions for this sort of abuse, starting from 2007 and moving up until last year. And if you see the intensity of most of these convictions and most activity is happening in the north and northwest, with Birmingham, London, Oxfordshire and the West Midlands also coming through. Now, if we move further up into the north of England, you see that absolute intensity of this crisis here, with some suspected gang activity moving into the edges of West Yorkshire, and a particular focus around Batley, around Dewsbury and Bradford, and also into Huddersfield. And then there's Rotherham on our next slide there, one of the most intense areas for this form of abuse. If you move on, you can show you what this website will show you, the number of convictions per local authority and area. Just 65 in Rotherham, where since 1997 we know that there have been at least 1,510 victims and survivors identified. The vast majority of those will not have achieved justice. And if Rotherham has 65 and the nation has over 500, that's tens of thousands of survivors still waiting for justice. And we've also compiled a network diagram, this analysis showing the extent of the trafficking crisis when we look at this form of abuse. And you can show that these are not isolated towns and cities dealing with this crisis, but these are interlinked, organised criminal gangs engaging in some of the most heinous abuse. You can see those links stretch nationwide. Some of these accounts have been gathered from government reports, they've been heard in courtrooms, or they've been given by police reports. But many of them have been given directly to GB News in exclusive interviews with survivors, sharing their experiences of trafficking. And then here it is in the north, the sheer intensity of these networks, how they interlink. And there's only just a couple of towns where they've actually had reports in this area, in Rochdale here, but also in Rotherham. You see how these are absolute centres of trafficking for the rest of the north of England. In some cases, we've also seen significant activity of men travelling to abuse or moving children around from the north straight into London. In one case, one survivor being trafficked from Bristol up to Rotherham. And you see those links go right across the northwest. But again, just a handful of these locations has actually had inquiries. So it is an extensive report, Eamon and Ellie. It does show how widespread this crisis is. And it just goes to show that against all of those demands for a full national statutory inquiry, there is so much evidence here of widespread links between abuse gangs, of this being a truly national scandal. And we can also reveal this morning that there are no evidence of any deportations for any grooming gang abusers since 2011, well over a decade since, as far as our records and archives can show, the last abuser was deported. This is a truly national scandal. It continues to rumble on with the controversy around the Minister Lucy Powell last week, and it just goes to show that ahead of Baroness Louise Casey's rapid audit returning, the GB News can show that just how extensive and how heinous this national scandal truly is.
Truly is heinous. Thank you so much, Charlie, for all your hard work on that.
Charlie, can I ask you a question? You may not know the answer to this, but for how many years during what you've been talking about there? For how many years was Keir Starmer the Director of Public Prosecutions? He must have covered some time in charge.
I think about 5 years, and he often says that he was part of the first grooming gang prosecution, that as DPP he led that successful prosecution. But our first prosecution we have here is from 2007. He's never said specifically which case that is, so we're not sure about that. But there is a clear overlap between the Prime Minister's time as DPP and also the many of the convictions that are going on here. Many survivors and those within the law say that during his period as DPP, CP. He did change the rules. The CPS updated its guidance to improve how these prosecutions take place. But even recently, up in Barrow in the northwest, also on our grooming gangs map, compiled with those researchers from Crime Spotlight, that grassroots group, we've heard many accounts of how the CPS has not followed through with prosecutions, even after quite severe and very direct testimony from survivors who still feel as though they're being let down, not just by social services and the police, but also by those in charge of prosecution.